Hi everyone. I'd like to read another piece from the book I've edited recently called Idries Shah Remembered. And this one is another extract from an electrical engineer who knew my father in the early part of his life, called Frank Whatney. I've called it Opening Minds. In the years that followed my first meetings with Idries Shah, our conversations about transistors evolved into something more ambitious. It started simply enough, tinkering in a workshop, testing circuits, soldering connections, but soon our modest experiments grew into a full-scale project, building scores of shortwave transistor radios and shipping them across the world. At the time, in the 1950s and the early 1960s, shortwave radios were more than just a means of entertainment. It was a lifeline for people living in isolated communities, from the mountain strongholds of Afghanistan to the sweeping deserts of North Africa, from the marshes of southern Iraq to the frozen wastelands of Soviet Russia. Radio technology was often the only access people had to the wider world. Governments controlled national broadcasts, but shortwave transmissions bouncing off electrically charged atoms in the ionosphere were impossible for them to censor. All you needed was a receiver to tune into voices from beyond your immediate horizon, from London, Cairo, New Delhi, or even Shanghai. Shah saw this as something far greater than a technological curiosity. To him, it was a means of shifting human thought. The human mind works like a receiver, he once told me, leaning over the workbench. What you hear, what you absorb, it shapes you. If you grow up in a place where only one voice is allowed, you'll never know that there are other voices, other ways to think, other ways to see or to live. So we built rudimentary radios. Shah put up the money to source components, and I handled the technical side, designing the circuits that would run on weak batteries, tuning them to pick up distant signals in the harshest of conditions, and then testing them relentlessly before packing them into sturdy cases so that they would survive sand, snow, and anything else people threw at them. Once they were ready, they were shipped off in batches. Some were sent through intermediaries, others smuggled across national frontiers. A few were even hand-delivered by travelers passing through distant points on a map, the kind most people had never even heard of. I remember one evening in about 1960, we loaded a consignment into a battered old Land Rover bound for Afghanistan. A mutual friend was making the journey and had agreed to distribute them along the way. As we secured the crates, I turned to Shah and I asked him something. What exactly do you expect to happen with all of these? I asked. He shrugged. You know, Frank, he replied, people's minds open in the strangest ways. Some will end up in the hands of traders, some with nomads, some in tea houses. A boy might hear a voice speaking a language he's never heard before and wonder what else he's never heard. A man in a remote village might listen to a station from Cairo discussing new ideas, and he might feel less alone in the world. You have to give people a means by which to listen and rethink, he said. But there was something more to it than just communication. Shah was deeply invested in the idea of what he called practical psychology, the notion that the human mind, if exposed to the right stimuli, could shift, adapt, and grow in ways that could reshape entire societies. He used to tell me how, for centuries, Sufi thinkers had devised methods by which to awaken people from what he described as self-imposed sleep, a condition in which they simply accepted the structures of thought handed down to them without any questions at all. To him, the radios were part of this wider forward-thinking strategy. By providing access to knowledge beyond one's immediate surroundings, He believed that people could begin to break free from rigid, habitual thinking. In a way, this wasn't too different from his later work with Sufi teaching stories, the same way a well-told tale could nudge a listener's understanding in a new direction. A well-placed radio signal could do the same. The most remarkable thing to me was that Shah never seemed concerned about measuring results. He didn't look for feedback. He didn't seek statistics. He didn't try to control what people learned from these broadcasts. This is a long-term project, he once told me. The effect won't be immediate, like a light being flicked on. It's more like scattering seeds on barren ground, he would say. You don't know where they'll land or even if they'll take root. But if you scatter enough, something will grow. Over the years, I heard stories, unverified but intriguing, about where some of our radios had ended up. A group of students in Tehran using one to listen to BBC broadcasts in secret. A trader in North Africa's souk passing along news he heard to travelers. A small enclave of intellectuals in Soviet Central Asia who had somehow managed to tune into transmissions they were never meant to hear. Did it change the world? I can't really say for sure, but what I do know is that Shah's vision was always about something bigger than just technology or even philosophy. He saw the mind as something that could be tuned, much like a radio, to pick up frequencies beyond its immediate environment. Looking back, I realized that building and distributing radios for free as we did was not just about spreading information. It was about possibility. The possibility that a single voice, a single idea, a single signal at the right moment and on the right frequency could be enough to shift the course of a single person's thinking. And sometimes, as Shah knew better than anyone, that was what it took to change the world.